Hello, fellow listeners. Today I am with Nadia of the Environmental Protection Agency. And you are an environmental engineer. So tell me about yourself. What does the Environmental Protection Agency do?
The Environmental Protection Agency, we're a federal government agency. Our mission is to protect human health and the environment.
Perfect. Yeah. So your job is an environmental engineer. Usually we don't collage those two terms together frequently.
Mm-hmm.
So, what does it incorporate? How do you make these two sides balance out?
Right. So let me start by explaining. So my position, my job class, when they hired me, they called it environmental engineer. But the job that they have me doing is project manager.
Oh!
So what the project manager does is kind of work with all different disciplines like science, attorneys, accountants, and we kind of pull everything together so that we can accomplish what we're trying to do.
That's perfect.
Yeah, but to answer your question about environmental engineering specifically, so engineering is very multidiscipline, but it's usually like civil engineering, there's nuclear engineering, there's mechanical engineering, there's chemical engineering, and all these different disciplines. And environmental engineering came about a little bit later, it came about I think right when I was in the late 80s or early 1990s. So it kind of was a new field. And it came about because it's we have these chemicals and we have to figure out what to do with. They're unsafe, we have to clean them up, or what do we do? So they combined, I think, the principles of chemical engineering with civil engineering. And kind of the focus was on wastewater treatment or clean it, treating chemicals and things. It's a basic level.
That's perfect. Help the environment using technology.
Yeah, using technology. Yeah, and then understanding. So I have a background. I have a bachelor's degree in environmental science and biology. And we got to pick between different sciences. So you could pick biology or math or even political science. That was one of the options. Yeah. So it was part of, you could pick your focus. So biology was my favorite.
Same. Ooh,
cool. That's great.
Biology really is good. We haven't gone into dissection yet. Dissection makes me a bit queasy, but so far I love it.
Yeah, it's you kind of have to pretend they're not real. The frog isn't real. The frog isn't real. So I had to. Yeah, that was the part wasn't my favorite, but I loved the actual.
Me too.
The information about it, what it told you about the little body parts and everything. So biology. So when I was in college, I had to decide what to do. Actually, freshman year, I had no idea what to do. And I had to, I took different classes, and just one day my roommate was like, have you tried environmental? It's like, what is that? Anyway, long story short, I went from knowing what it is, and it was my passion.
That's great. You have to thank your roommate for that.
I do. I see her once in a while, and I always thank her for my life path.
Yes. Friends.
Yeah. So biology and environmental science, and then my last year, I took an environmental engineering class, and it had to do with water quality and seeing if the water's dirty or not, contaminated. And it's you focus on at the time it was more about wastewater, so sewage water basically. So you look for bacteria. It translates back to biology because you're looking for something to tell you is it contaminated or not.
Yeah, the two studies just overlap.
Yeah. So it was you still got to be in the lab, you got to go out in the field and collect these samples, and then I was like, oh, this is a fascinating field, and I was like, oh, I should probably do more. But that was my last semester, so I was like, I couldn't graduate in environmental engineering. I had, So then I decided, okay, I'm gonna go to graduate school. Yeah. So we did. Yeah, I applied for environmental science and I applied for environmental engineering.
That's perfect.
But they called me and said, you can't have both. It's just you can't have both rooms, you get a pick. So I'm like, uh-oh. So I decided, well, I'll pick engineering because that's harder to get into, and usually, it's that's what I wanted to learn.
Yeah.
And then I figured if I didn't get in, I would then go to science.
Yeah, that's perfect. Backup plan.
Yeah. But so even then though, I knew learning about environment, learning about the hazardous wastes and all these toxic chemicals, and then what do we do about them? How do we study them. Like
Exactly.
how do we study them? Like what do we do to turn them into something safe?
Yes.
So that was like the focus of just knowing all the chemistry behind it. And the engineering part came in where the actual like physical water treatment, like, you know, your carbon on your, you do carbon to treat your water. So it's just literally how do you filter water to like, you know, make it, take out all the impurities.
Yeah.
So
wow.
yeah.
So you used all your knowledge,
Yeah.
gained environmental science,
Yeah.
chemistry, all that stuff, and you applied it to make water safe, healthy, potable.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Second question. So basically, you mentioned that the EPA, in their general website, EPA.org, they
.gov.
Okay. On EPA.gov.
Gov. There we go.
So I read that EPA also is concerned with turning hazardous, like lands, like mines, that stuff, landfills, I'm assuming, to more safe things.
Yeah.
So what makes it hazardous is that there's a lot of chemicals in there, right? But because Earth is a closed system, how can you treat the chemicals into something safe?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess we could come up with an example, like a landfill, for example. So what I didn't mention is that I am in the Superfund program, which is the hazardous waste. We call them the older hazardous waste sites that came about because we didn't have environmental laws to say, oh, you can't dump toxic waste into a hole and cover it up. You know, so that's what people did. They like took their toxic waste, put it in a hole and covered it up with dirt, and they called that, okay, it's the landfill.
Wow.
Yeah, so no one thought about, oh, well, what's going to happen to that waste?
People think long term,
Yeah.
okay?
They
Think
thought,
long
well,
term.
no one's around here, you know, no one's going to care. Well, later on we found out, oh, it's leaching into the water, groundwater underneath, and then people are pumping the water out to drink water, and so it's like contaminating those wells. So the Superfund was set up to kind of find those sites and like set up a funding for them, and either going to the people that made the waste and if the companies that are responsible, and if they went bankrupt, then the government would set up the Superfund, which is a giant account of money where we can like help pay for it.
Yeah, that's perfect. So how do you guys identify where the toxic waste?
Yeah. So but your question had to do with the cleanup, but we can go through that process.
Yeah,
so like, okay, so let's take a landfill. So I had a project, one of my first projects when I started working for EPA, were 2 landfills in Arizona. So the first landfill was built along the river. So back in the day, they thought, oh, let's build it on the river.
So the waste flushed into the river.
So what happened, a big flood came, a huge flood came, washed out part of the landfill into the river. So they had to close the landfill. Then the Department of Health, you know, the people that kind of regulated it at the time was like, okay, we need to take our waste somewhere, and we have this hazardous toxic waste. Where do we go with it? They're like, well, we have this other area out in the middle of nowhere. Let's dump it there. So
Wow.
they had another land. That was the main concern. Like when we found out about these sites, the state and the city were like, okay, we have this problem. We don't know what to, we need help. And so we used our Superfund program to like, and we have a certain way of like evaluating sites. So we find out, okay, well, what damage is it causing? Like, obviously you don't want garbage in the river.
Yeah.
Right, so we knew that was a problem.
Yeah, definitely.
And then we wanted to sample the groundwater to see if the landfill had like leaked into the groundwater, and then we sampled the air because like this landfill actually was like a municipal landfill where there's a lot of garbage, and then that garbage decomposes and makes methane gas, which is explosive.
Oy.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah, so methane is one of the biggest problems with the landfill. So it's like we had to make sure like, is the methane getting out of the landfill? And so we look at all these different things where the contamination can go, and then how do we stop it? Like you said, like how do we make it safer? So it's not like we, like in a landfill, we don't, I mean, the one thing you do is dig it all up and then take it somewhere else, which doesn't really solve the problem.
Yeah.
Or you could burn it, and that's another way that folks have dealt with it. But in this case, it became a Superfund site so that we could like figure out what to do. When I came to work on it, they'd already figured out that it needed a levee in the river to prevent the waste from going into the river.
Yeah.
They looked at the different options. Like our program has to look at all the different options, like dig it out and put it somewhere, cover it up, and so we do this process where we look at the cost, we look at how effective, like is it gonna work? Is it gonna last for a long time?
Basically, you did the cost
Yeah,
benefit
we did
analysis.
yeah. So then that was like the biggest part of the remedy was like put in this thing. And then it also was, oh, well, we need to make sure that this waste, like the methane is controlled. So it's like putting in a system to like take out the methane and treat it and all that. And then the cover was another important thing, like the dirt that goes on top is making sure that like it tends to like break apart. So it's like has to be constantly maintained and like the cracks get filled in with dirt and then you put plants on top, like native plants to help keep the roots kind of help keep it together. Yeah. So that's kind of like when we look at those, try to figure out like, okay, what is going to happen to this? How do we keep it there? You know, where it doesn't move and people don't get exposed. And then there's fencing and there's some basic stuff like your average person, they can't just go in there.
Yeah, it's like, don't go hazardous zones still, like under.
But yeah, but it's like we didn't have the technology that was easy enough to just dig it out and make it safe, so they just left it there in place. So the other thing is, I don't end up, there's no end of my sentence.
I like it.
I just go on and on.
It's a run on.
It's a run on.
Thoughts.
Right. But we have this program, like if it is in place, like if we can't just take it out and get rid of it or turn it into something safe, we don't have like a magic, you know, we don't have a zapper.
I command you to zap all of these out.
Right, to zap it and it disappears. So since we don't have that, we have a process where if we're leaving it there, we have to look at this like every 5 years. 5-year review, we call it a 5-year review. So it's like, right now, all they are monitoring it to make sure it's working and, you know, trash isn't escaping and, you know, methane's being treated. But every 5 years, we have a requirement to go back and look and say, okay, is this working the way we're supposed to? Like, did a flood happen and break, you know, like, is there something else we need to do?
History repeats itself.
Is the flood, yeah, is it working? And, you know, and then we found out, actually, we did one of these and like, this is where the engineering comes in. This is kind of the fun part. So we're like, okay, so we need to design this levee on the river for a 100-year flood. Like that was the criteria we used. Well, 30 years later, we realized like, well, the 100-year flood is now the 10-year flood. You know, it's like, it's about how bad the flood's gonna be and how often. Well, now with floods happening more often and more severe, we realized like, uh-oh, this levee may not make it if we have a bigger flood. So that was one of the things we had to look at. I was like, is there something we need to do to like address it? You use engineering to figure out, okay, how sturdy is that? And inspect it to make sure it's still in place and working and everything. So yeah, so that's
perfect. So you kind of just like evacuated the dangerous material, put it in a more safe place, away from any hazards.
Right.
You blocked off the thing that might have caused it to boom again. Clean up like the previous site. And then you buried it with native plants, you know, using, environment. And you would check in on it like every 5 years.
Check in on it.
Which is good. That's great.
It's actually being checked on more often, but the official regulation is like 5 years. But that's kind of, I mean, it's being looked at.
It's very flexible though, because with our changing climate, it needs to be
So we have a lot of new policies now about changing climate and how our remedies or our cleanup things need to be looked at differently because it's like, oh, well, we didn't think about the fire that's going to come through.
Oh,
how is that going to damage, you know?
You have to account for everything.
So when that landfill, I said they moved the waste somewhere else in the middle of nowhere, well, that became a Superfund site because they didn't put anything underneath it to like keep it from migrating into the ground. Because there was rules, you know, now that we're like, okay, you can't put anything in the ground until you put like a very solid thing
you have to have like trap it in.
Yeah, it's in the regulations, like how you can build a landfill and keep it safe and what inspections you have to do and all that. So for this one, it wasn't built right. And then, so that became a Superfund site because they realized, oh, it contaminated the groundwater. But that was my other project. So I was like, it was like, oh, I have, you know, now I know what happens when you don't think about the cycle, like the full life cycle of things. So
learning from your mistakes.
Yeah, learning from your mistakes. It actually took longer to figure that one out because there was volcanic activity in the area.
Really?
This is very interesting.
Oh.
So like by the river where the other landfill was, it's very sandy because, you know, the river over the years, and this is also like geology, where it gets wet once in a while. I mean, it's Arizona, so it's like, it was formed because rivers would come through, and so it was very sandy. And when you have sand, like the water flows very easily, easier to flush out too. But out in this area, there's like these volcanic flows.
Oh.
So this is geology. So geology comes in where it's like, oh, so what actually happened is, we didn't know this in the beginning. So they put in a system to pump the water out, and they put in a vapor extraction system to pull out the gases and the things that were coming off the waste. And then they were like, this is not getting better. Like they're like, the water, it's like was low contaminated, but it like, gases were still coming out really high. I'm like, how come? Like, what is happening? We don't know what's happening. So they did some more study, and they found out like where they put the waste. Most of it was on top of this volcanic area, but the volcanic area was very solid and it didn't leak through that.
So it shouldn't.
It didn't. But then there was a part where they put the waste. They didn't realize the volcano, like, they called it the basalt, it like thinned out.
Oh.
So they didn't know this, you know, when they built the landfill. If they just built it on the part where the volcano was, we probably wouldn't have a Superfund site. But they didn't know this. It was like going from a big thing to a narrow thing. So it was on the edge of that. So then it went around the thing and then went into the under the ground.
Oh.
So that's how.
So it like circumvented.
Yeah, it circumvented it kind of. So it was fast. So it's like to figure that out, you have to have a lot of like drilled wells and take samples from the ground, take samples from the water.
Wow.
So they finally realized that this area where they didn't know was a big problem, they realized it was a bigger problem because it's like they didn't have that barrier.
Yeah.
So then that changed. So then they were like, oh, and then they realized like most of the contamination was coming from the gases, like that are coming off the chemicals, and not as much going into the groundwater because they had this volcanic thing for the most part.
Yeah.
It was just this one little area where it was going into the groundwater.
And it emitted.
Yeah,
like,
so they're like, oh, well, instead of focusing on pumping the groundwater out, they still pump the groundwater, but they're like, that's gonna take forever.
We have to block it off.
So they built a system to like suck out all the air all the time to kind of keep it from going into the groundwater. So they're just running that system, and it actually is one of the few sites where I think they're gonna get close to cleanup where they say, oh, we're at that point where it's not gonna hurt groundwater anymore.
So it's like you've remedied everything.
Yeah.
And like you've sucked up all of those. So now it's like normal.
Yeah,
Like, there's
so that's
no
the
emissions
idea.
or
That's
anything.
the idea, is eventually get it to normal.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's perfect.
Yeah.
Wow, so now we have the environment accounted for. Groundwater,
Yeah.
you know, these hazardous sites. But the other part of EPA's motto is to protect humans. Human health.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I also read on EPA.gov that you guys check for chemicals in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And I recently read a news article about this, how a lot of like products, especially for like skin products, lipstick,
boy,
shampoo, lotion, all that stuff,
Yep.
they have hidden chemicals
Chemicals.
in the ingredients that are not listed.
No.
So the buyers do not know, but how do you guys detect it?
Yeah. Now, I'm not involved in that program because there's like, I think another set, actually, I think the Food and Drug Administration,
Wow.
the other government agency may be involved in the
big.
actual, I don't know for sure, that's like testing these products or supposed to be testing these products. So someone's probably doing the test and going, oh wow, there's some, so I know like if we import makeup, there's like heavy metals and things that are toxic for us.
Yes.
So I don't know who does the standards for what's safe makeup and what's not. It's not my area of expertise.
Yeah, but
But you'll see, I don't wear makeup.
yeah.
And that's because when I was younger, I learned about all these chemicals.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, how do you know? And like, apparently, obviously there's some regulation about, I think Food and Drug actually does it. We'll have to do that research to find out what government agency
Yes.
deals with that.
Definitely.
So I know the state, California has rules that are more strict about identifying chemicals that might cause cancer. So they had that, that's why
They
there's
have like
labels
the
everywhere.
tag thing, yes.
So,
On a lot of foods.
yeah, so that's all about the regulations and what's regulated and what's not. But we do have a science, like we call the Office of Research and Development, that's really just about researching things like that.
Oh wow, that's awesome. Like you guys are divided into like sections
We're
that kind of
different-
overlap.
Yeah, we
though.
overlap.
Yeah.
Like we utilize the research and development information. Like we look at them to help us do a better cleanup or do an investigation and find out what's really in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Again, a reoccurring theme in life, teamwork.
Yeah, it is actually, EPA is definitely all about teamwork. And the interesting thing about environmental science that really appealed to me from the beginning, they call it because it's a multidisciplinary field. So you're dealing with multiple different kinds of fields.
Yes.
Like you have geology, biology, chemistry.
Yeah.
So that's what really, I was fascinated.
So intriguing.
Yeah.
It's like you have to be a jack of all trades to understand
kind of,
this.
yeah. And then, if you're, so as a project manager, you
got
you
a
have
heavy responsibility.
Yeah, it's like trying to understand what people are telling you, like the experts, and then trying to work with the public too, and trying to explain to them what's going on.
Exactly.
And then make sure that they're okay with what we're doing.
Definitely. Yeah. So in your efforts to aid the public,
The
all
public,
of that,
we work with the public.
So you guys work with other corporations.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about that. Like
Okay.
what other institutions?
Yeah. So we'll talk about the Superfund law.
Yep.
We nickname it CERCLA because of the label of the law. And that established the responsibility for companies who were doing the polluting to actually pay for the cleanup and go back and do the cleanup.
That's good. Well
Which is
deserved.
logical, right? So like you said, like they're kind of redeeming themselves. They're like, oh, our job is to kind of encourage them or partner with them to make sure that they take responsibility.
Yeah, so it won't happen.
So it doesn't happen again, and then also they undo what they did. Like if they're poisoning the community with the chemicals, that
You gotta realize it.
yeah. So it's like you need to do something to clean that up, and we ask them to pay for our costs. So like we have to spend time looking at what they're doing to make sure they're gonna meet the law and like do a cleanup. Like if we just said, oh, hey company, go back and do what you want, there's no guarantee what's gonna happen.
Exactly.
So we're responsible for making sure they do what they're supposed to do according to the laws that we have to make things safe.
Yep, and it's working, right? They're
Mostly
being obedient.
But like actually Russell, who was in here earlier, mentioned about enforcement.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes they're like, no, we're not gonna do this, or they disagree with us. And then we do have to use the law, like the way it's set
The
up.
records.
We use records. We sometimes have to sue them.
What?
And sometimes they sue us. Like sometimes we're like, oh, you need to do this and pay us money, and they're like, no. And then they're like, no, we're gonna sue you. So there's a lot of legal stuff going on too, because it's all about how the law was written. So
Wow.
Yeah.
It's like combining
It's
so many
right.
elements.
But there's a lot of, like companies responsible. So we work with them, and the ones I work with the most though is the Department of Defense.
Ooh, tell me about DOD.
So DOD, Department of Defense, is federal government. It's obviously our military.
Gov.
Yeah, .gov. They also do a lot of like manufacturing and things that require using a lot of chemicals.
Yeah.
So there's pretty much like every military base on the planet has some kind of contamination.
But like they have to do it, so how do you guys treat that problem?
They do have to do it, and so we enter in these agreements. That's the other thing, like even with a company, Department of Defense, Congress had special rules like between EPA and the Department of Defense because we're both federal government.
Technically.
So
they should
you
be like,
can't sue yourself. Like, so, right? So like,
Yeah,
they're like, oh,
for
EPA, if you're having a problem with the military, but you're under the same branch of government. You're both under the president.
You can't sue it.
Yeah, so it's like we're both under the president. So it's
Whoa, like right.
yeah. So it's like this. What do we do? And there's very rare cases where we've actually the federal attorney is the Department of Justice. So it's like the Justice League, the
Justice
Department
Department.
of Justice, the DOJ, and like we literally have to make our case to DOJ, or they have to make their case to DOJ, and then they have to decide, okay, which way, what are we gonna do here?
Yeah.
So it's an interesting role because
It's like you're stuck in a pickle.
You're stuck in
like
a
they
pickle.
have to decide
yeah.
this
Who's gonna
or
do-
this
yeah.
or none.
So sometimes we have to like try to use, we have a lot of different tools to like enforce. It's like sometimes we can issue these like orders where it's like, you must do this.
Yes,
But-
that's a command.
Yeah, you must do this. And then, and then there's agreed upon. So sometimes we negotiate and agree, like we're gonna agree on the language. They're gonna agree to it, but it's also, they have to do it or we can take them to court. And they agree that. They're like, yeah, we're gonna clean this up.
Power of justice.
So with the Department of Defense and EPA, we have a special like agreement that we come up with in the very beginning. It's called a Federal Facilities Agreement. This is kind of like our binding agreement. So we look at that to go, okay, are we following what we agreed to? And so then there's a process in there for like, okay, if we don't agree, process for bringing it up through our management. And then eventually it goes all the way up to headquarters if it has to. And then there's someone up real high that will like make the decision. These responsibilities are the president's responsibilities. It says the president shall. So what the president does is they delegate that responsibility to their like their staff, right? So certain decisions and certain actions like they've delegated down to like the region or the division, and when I say region, it's like I said, we're the San Francisco office.
Yeah, Region 9.
We Region 9, and we deal with like 5
Surrounding
states.
states.
The local states like Arizona, Nevada, and Pacific Islands.
Hawaii.
And Hawaii, yeah. And California.
Wow.
So sometimes it's the head of that, EPA Region 9. And we call that a regional administrator. And then that person is appointed by the administrator, which is in Washington, D.C., that person's appointed by the president.
Whoa.
So I kind of went backwards, but it's like, so it's the president, the administrator, then the administrator picks these people. So every time there's a different president, those people all get replaced.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. To know that I'm interviewing a person working for an organization under like
under the president,
under the
executive branch.
What qualities does somebody need to have to be in your shoes, or anybody EPA's shoes?
In EPA's shoes, because we have to like come up with the solutions, and we have to get everyone to agree. Try to get everyone to agree. So part of that skill is like being comfortable working with other people that are from different backgrounds, that have different educational levels. So being able to work with a lot of different people.
Yeah, teamwork.
Teamwork. Well, everything we're doing all goes back to the public. So it's like doing things like
We're
this,
like
where it's like
self-serving, right? Kind of like our community is like, in a way, serving like different things. Yeah.
Yeah. Purpose of us is to make sure the public is safe and the environment. Well, how can I make sure this neighborhood isn't being contaminated by this factory? And it really goes back to like what's happening to the people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just like how, so and that is usually the focus of like who is being exposed to this chemical.
Yeah.
Really, and then trying to talk, making sure that we're communicating with the people that are actually impacted.
Yeah. You're like, you guys are exposed to the public, and so you're like more conscientious of their problems,
right?
What's going on,
right?
Which can help you guys better yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And like actually, the public, they help us understand like what are the problems, because what we're gonna fix a problem that's not really a problem. They tell us what the problems are. Sometimes.
Yeah, and then you help them.
And then I help them
it's like,
fix it. Yeah.
A nice cycle, not
yeah,
the vicious cycle.
It is. Yeah. So we're really public, like, at least in Superfund, it's about helping the public, and so that
definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Final icebreaker though.
Icebreaker. We're still on icebreakers. When do the real questions come? Icebreaker.
When I planned it, I did not know that we would be two peas in a pod.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I put an icebreaker at the very end, which was not very logistically strategic for me, but it's fine. So we will end on a very open note. So if you could have a superpower, what would it be?
Oh, I have thought about this. My superpower, and it would be to zap the tech chemicals like away.
Yeah.
Just make them disappear.
That's perfect for your job. Good job. Yeah.
So I'm like walking around, and there's like a landfill with all this toxic, and then it's gone. It's just ta-da!
Yeah.
So that would be my super. That would be. I would want that superpower.
That's really cool.
But so far, I have to do it the hard way.
The human way.
I have to do it the real way until someday though our technology. Yeah. We get closer and closer to just.
Actually though.
We are.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you too.
For taking the time for me to interview you.
Yeah. High five.
Yeah.
You're doing the best work because you're really inquisitive. That was one of my, when I was younger, I was voted the most inquisitive.
Oh, that's nice.
Because I always was like, why, what?
Why,
what, how?
Why?